What's up, everybody? Yash Hattie Hatkar back here. This time, our podcast is with NAMI. I got Latasha Brown here, Community Engagement Manager. I got a longtime friend, Ebony Coates. The whole way of how we met is super interesting, so I actually kind of wanted to just get into that. Ebony, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, we worked at Groupon for, I want to say about 2 years,
Yes.
I believe. And so we kind of just maintained our friendship even throughout the pandemic as well. And then I followed up with you in regards to the project that you were doing and that idea that you came up with sharing your story, and I saw it on Snapchat and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm really intrigued by this. And depression and suicide is a heavy topic, especially now more than ever since we've been going through the pandemic. And I'm passionate about mental health, and so I wanted to be involved in it in some way. And so I reached out to you and was like, well, how can I do my due diligence and be involved in any way I can be? And so yeah, that's how it kind of started. And it was
Wonderful. And Latasha, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Latasha Brown. So I'm a community engagement manager with NAMI Chicago. I'm also a mental health practitioner for the last 7 years, and I've worked with at-risk youth from ages 18 to 24 that may have had some community and gang violence, maybe some domestic violence, those that have experienced depression, those that have experienced anxiety, those that have just had some just generational trauma. And so I get an opportunity to work with NAMI Chicago that help bridges the gap between this mental health, bring the mental health awareness to our communities and to things like this, to what you guys are doing. So this is pretty dope.
Thank you. No, that means a lot. One thing I want to thank you and all of NAMI is that when I look at my journey, like one thing that they stressed every time in therapy is that it's not just you go in, you do a couple sessions and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like finally starting to accept that it's always going to kind of be like this, and you're going to have to focus on continuous improvement. And the goal is not to be done. The goal is just to keep growing and getting better. I want to thank NAMI because pre-suicide attempt, it was my outpatient therapist, then I had Highland Park Hospital and all of Rogers Behavioral Health, and then August 5th when I got discharged, it was scary because it's like, oh no, back into the real world. But having a mental health organization to continue working with, it's a form of therapy in itself. So sincere thank you to you guys for being that sort of third leg in this continuous improvement. But that's hard to accept. For me, having gone through all of it, that's still hard to accept. I guess, do you have a message for why that's important, why it's not about being just done and cured, as everyone thinks?
I think that's a great question. I think one, really what happens is therapy is there to help you to manage your symptoms, right? It's to help you to create being a better, authentic you. As you mentioned, it was like, okay, now I'm out in the real world. So what do I do? And sometimes the real world can re-trigger you. It can re-trigger your symptoms. And so what therapy does, continuous therapy, is saying, hey, let's manage your symptoms. Sometimes it will never go away, but therapy helps you to put boundaries and help you to manage the symptoms that you may be experiencing with coping skills, with meditation, mindfulness, yoga. There's different coping skills that your therapist or therapy can help to kind of manage what it is that you experience, and so you can kind of continue in the real world. And two, I just want to say what NAMI does is we support that. Like, we're not a provider of services. NAMI Chicago is not. However, we have a helpline that's open 7 days a week that people can call, from whether you need a therapist referral to all the way down to shoes and you need somewhere to live, like homelessness. We're the boots on the ground to help the community support what it is that they're experiencing, to what you mentioned.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I like that you brought up coping skills. In my interaction with some of your colleagues, it was wonderful how they stressed a point that I think like we hear, but sometimes it takes a few times to hear it, that you have a mental illness, you are not your mental illness. I love that you guys push that. I know that's a big thing in the therapy world. Coping skills, they come in every which way, shape, or form. Do you guys have a particular one that you found is super helpful for you?
Well, not so much NAMI Chicago as a whole.
Oh, my bad. I meant I should have clarified. I guess individually, each of you.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I do. As a therapist, as a Christian therapist myself, one of the coping skills I like to share with clients, and that I do for myself as well, is meditation, like deep breathing. Like deep breathing kind of helps you to just regulate the mind. Sometimes there's triggers of anxiety, and if you really think about it, in a day-to-day world, we don't breathe correctly. Like, we don't let all of the air out of our stomachs just normally. So can you imagine having a panic attack? Can you imagine, having a depressed episode and your breathing is off? So I would say meditation, just deep breathing, taking about 5 minutes, uninterrupted time, whether you got to sit in your car, if you got to go in the bathroom and lock yourself in, kind of put your hands on your thighs, sit up straight, close your eyes, breathe in through your nose, and then slowly exhale through your mouth as you let all of the air out of your stomach.
Oh, yeah. Definitely agree. And it's interesting to see how the mind, body, and spirit are all connected. So if you're pretty much suppressing all those emotions and feelings, and it's going to affect your body, because I'm a very anxious person. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And so always trying to do it right all the time, it's going to affect you. It'll affect you here, but it will affect your body. So you have this stress of trying to keep up on a day-to-day basis, but you don't realize how much that it takes a toll on your body. So for me, I love to exercise. I love to stretch. I love to stretch. I love to go out in nature. My meditation is huge for me. I sit and I pretty much sit and I make sure that I'm still, and I'm like, okay, what are these thoughts? And are these thoughts true? I'm really big onto prayer. So I like to pray. I like to meditate and say, okay, what is the truth and what is not the truth? Yeah. And learning to cast down those ungodly beliefs that I place on myself. This is true. It is true.
That is so good.
Ebony. You have to tear down those ungodly beliefs. And it's just like, if this is not true, then why do I feel this way? And so, that's really big for me. Exercising, meditation, journaling, and making sure I'm keeping myself accountable for these
and not judging those thoughts.
Yes.
A lot of people judge the thoughts that they are that they're experiencing, even in that meditation. Don't judge them.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
No, I'm so glad you guys bring that up, because the reason I used to shy away from meditation was so much of it, I guess, from the cultural background I come from, or just the types of meditations I'd been encouraged, was clear your mind, don't think of anything. And I think through therapy, it's been the opposite. Like, no, think it, feel it, all of it, and just let it be there. One of my favorite types of meditation was with my aunt, who's also a mental health practitioner. She's just like, let's just put on music, and then I said, can we alternate song choices? And she's like, yeah, sure. And it didn't even matter. One of her song choices was Crazy Frog. But it's like, we're just vibing, listen to Crazy Frog. She's like, you don't got to sit all pretzel leg. You sit what's comfortable for you. And then we just vibe with it. And I'm like, this is so cool. Because at the end of the day, the focus is what's up here. It's not about all that other stuff. So, but for me, it's been walking. I always tell my therapist, my parents, it's like, worry about me if you see me huddled in a corner somewhere, or just sitting somewhere and just stuck. I find that walking helps me at least allow the thoughts to move with me. So sometimes you get in this space where you're just like, you're stuck in this loop and you want to get to this logic train, but like you're stuck here. And so I try to move around, just walk, breathe that fresh air, even if it's super cold. We'll just put on a jacket, go out for a walk, and just kind of just keep thinking about it until you're ready to like kind of do what you guys said, like not block things out.
Wind therapy is so good, whether you're walking or on a motorcycle, right? I kind of do both. I ride Harley Davidson, so wind therapy is absolutely amazing. And I think that wind therapy can be, even when you walking, just having the air and just whether it's the coldness or the sun like beaming down on your face, or just that coolness hitting your skin, I think that releases some toxins and some negative things that are happening in the mind.
Can I just say, love the fit. Now that you write up, I'll tell you where I'm going with it. I say this because I love filmmaking, and now I'm thinking we got to do a NAMI commercial. This fit, riding in on the Harley, wind therapy, presented by NAMI.
I love it.
Do a whole wind therapy music video.
Yes.
I don't know.
We gotta make mental health cool.
Yeah.
I like that. That's creative.
Yeah. No, I love this, and I think it's wonderful that we're talking about this, because I brought that up, right? Because even the stand-up, right? People are saying that like, oh, that's an interesting way to go about it. But I found that like, if we all look at it, we've all at some point, maybe just to let some steam loose, joked about something that's happened to us, just because it's cathartic. Sometimes you're at that point where you're like, man, I just want to laugh. And I want to take a breather from all this and share this solidarity with the people who went through this with me, and just be like, hey, we did this. We overcame that. My question for you guys is, I've noticed, at least more recently, that therapy, if nothing else, helps you believe in yourself so much if you kind of get through it. And I wonder if that's an aspect that's often kind of overlooked when people think, oh, it's for people. Like we were talking before, it's like, oh, the question's always, what's wrong with you? And I say, why don't we do the therapy to avoid having things being wrong with us? You know? It's kind of getting ahead of it. We want to get ahead of everything else. Everyone's like, be proactive. But with our mind, it's always like, nope, wait till the last moment till you can't take it anymore. I know I'm going in circles, but like, self-belief. Have you guys found that there can be a way to really push that idea that if you can get over this, you can kind of get over anything in life?
Yeah, I would say it's a process. It's like a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So we could be our own worst critics at times. We be the ones that really are hard on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then you talk to your friends, it's like, well, I mean, you're great at this, you're doing that.
It's not so bad.
It's not that bad. And you're just thinking like, well, this, that. And we have to realize that we are not our past mistakes. We are not our past. That doesn't define us. And we have to learn how to give each other grace. Yes. You know, we have to give each other. Life is hard. You know, things happen that we can't control. And so really unlearning those patterns, those untoxic patterns, and learning like, hey, like this is something that I went through, but it doesn't define me. You know what I mean? Like you can start over. You can have a clean slate. It's not the end of the world. It seems like it. We're in the midst of it, and all you're surrounded by is chaos. Trust me, I've been there, and it just seems like the whole world is caving in you. And that's the beautiful thing about therapy. It's like I kind of see like therapists being superheroes in a sense. You know, you have so many people. I know it's been trending like the whole self-care, and people throw trauma, and people throw, but it's a serious thing. You know, like high functioning depression is just one thing that I realize is like people that I love and people that I care about, depression doesn't discriminate at all. So good. You know, it's so important to have transparent conversations like this, because you realize, oh, you too. You know what I mean? We don't have to we have to address the white elephant in the room and kind of be open to have these, uncomfortable conversations to be like, it's okay to not be okay.
Yes.
And this is what I'm
Yes.
feeling.
Yes.
Some days I can be good. I'm known to be very, bubbly and, always wanting to. I'm very optimistic. I have some days where I just want to get in the car and just scream.
Well, scream.
And scream. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And try. And it's okay to not have all the answers to figure it out. We're all on the same boat. We're all on the same journey together. And the beauty about having conversations when it comes to this is that we all can help each other.
Yeah.
That's what's what's the bigger purpose? Is that we have a voice, we can use it for the greater good. And if we have the resources like NAMI doing amazing stuff for the community outside, the office and the clinical practice, what can we do to raise our voices, and how can we use our position and resources that we have to make a difference in the community? And it starts with us.
Yeah.
It starts with us.
I think that's amazing. I think one of the things that NAMI Chicago does is really push that helpline, that 7 day a week helpline, because they realize that, you may not be triggered on a Monday, but you may be triggered on a Sunday. So you have this 7 day a week helpline to help people call in, whether you just need somebody to talk to. Mm-hmm. The helpline is there not to diagnose you, not to, push you out to a therapist, but if you just need to talk. Sometimes I feel like people aren't seen. Mm-hmm. People feel like they're invisible or that they're alone. And one of NAMI's goals and jobs is that we try to push out into the community that you are not alone. You are not alone in this process. And I think too that therapy helps, because it's almost like, as I was sharing with you both before we actually got on today, was that there's this amazing book by Bruce Perry. It's called Not What's Wrong with You, but What Happened to You.
So good.
And so I think that if we can dispel this myth of what's wrong with you, why are you acting like that? It's what happened to me. Something happened, whether it was trauma, it could have been generational trauma, because some things are biological, right? Yes. Some things, maybe you didn't have a traumatic childhood growing up, but maybe it's in the bloodline. Maybe depression has been in the bloodline down to your grandmother, to your great grandfather, to your to your ancestors, right? And we can't deny what's in the bloodline. So I think that when our parents or our grandparents don't acknowledge it, then as Gen Zs and Gen Xs and millennials, it's like something is wrong. I need help. Like, things are going okay in my life, but I'm still sad. I still feel this hopelessness. Why? And family don't understand. And I think the therapist helps you to get out of your head and get those thoughts into the airwaves, right? And so they're there to support you, to say, you are not alone in this. I see you, and we can get through this thing together. I feel like adults are having a hard time adulting.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
Yes.
You brought up a lot of wonderful stuff in there. What I wanted to ask a little bit more about is this conversation of like what's wrong with you and not being able to trust family. Sometimes I found that is definitely prevalent within the brown community, but I've learned through conversations it's also prevalent in the black community. I'm happy to share my case as well, but what have you guys found is the reason for that? Why is it so hard to sometimes open up about things within our bigger community? Why is it always like keep it hush hush?
Honestly, I don't know. I would say for the black community, it's, growing up, I heard my grandparents say, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Even from a spiritual perspective, you couldn't even go to the pastor or the church and tell the church community, like, hey, this is happening in our family. It was everything that goes on in this house stays in this house. We're going to work it out together. We'll figure it out. And honestly, I feel like they did the best that they could, because they didn't possibly have the tools, and they were very, maybe just ignorant to therapy, that it's almost like, you know, it was emotional, they were emotionally unavailable. You know, I think that in the Black community is just, we keep our stuff to ourselves and this is what we're going to do. But what we're realizing is that a lot of, you know, children that are being born are realizing something is not right. But I don't know why. That's a great question. I don't know how to really pinpoint that. But what I find personally is that, you know, they just want to keep everything into their space. And, you know, I was one of those kids growing up saying, this is not right. And so I kind of broke the generational curse in my family to say, hey, you know, if you guys won't support me, I'm going to get outside support. And once I started to educate myself and actually really go through therapy myself, it was kind of like, okay, now they started to see, okay, I think it's just about the education, the lack of knowledge. As the Bible says, we perish because of lack of knowledge, right? So when I started to share the information, then the walls start coming down. My family starts saying, oh, okay. But it's so much work still to do, so much plowing to do.
Right. Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I just started to ask questions. Like, what happened? You know, what's going on? And I think, especially when it comes to, you know, the Black community, it's just we sort of normalize our dysfunction, and we do it so well. And so I never grew up in church, but I went to a private school. It wasn't until I got to a private school where I realized, wait, this is not normal. Like in our community, is like, you know, growing up in a single parent home, the father's not present. That's huge. So it's like that whole, the strong Black woman. You know, and I had to apologize to my mom because I couldn't figure out why she's so hard, you know, why you're so strict. And she was dealing with her own trauma. You know, she was out there on the streets when she was 14 years old. You know, so who knows who could have taken advantage of. Like you said, ignorance is bliss. You know, having those open conversations, sitting down, what happened? What's your story? What's your truth? And those generational curses is real. And I realized that story, what happened to my mother, doesn't have to be that story. You know, and she probably wasn't told, like, you know, this wasn't okay. You know, her grandmother and her mother, it was these same toxic patterns that was passed down from generation to generation. And like you said, it takes self-awareness. You know, it takes you saying, like, this is not gonna I'm not passing this on to the next generation. It's gonna stop with me. You know, and all you need is just that one person to make a difference and say that. But, you know, you have to have that open conversation. Use empathy. You know, a lot of our experiences we hold on to it. Maybe it could have stemmed from slavery. It could have stemmed all the way back from slavery, but we had to be strong. We didn't have any. You don't have any emotions. You know what I mean? So in our minds, like, we had to be strong. We had to fight because we were considered inferior. You know, like, right? You know, at the time, white supremacy and racism still going on, but it was a mental thing for us, and I think we passed that down from generations. We had to fend for ourselves, because who else is going to do it? You know,
so right.
We can't show our feelings because we seem too weak.
Absolutely.
So it probably stemmed from slavery.
I think that's a very deep, thoughtful way of looking at it, because I often wonder, is it sometimes the same thing? Of course not to that level, but the same idea of, like, there's a lack of trust in the outside world. We always say, like, what goes, like, because we've heard that too, like, we don't need to go telling the world what's happening inside this house. Why do you gotta ask somebody else? Talk about it, share about it with us. Does it mean you don't trust us? It's like, no, it just means that, like, we want, like, an unbiased outside perspective, you know? Like, we don't want. And sometimes I feel like there can be a shame, right? Like, there's parts of us that I think we are all entitled to keeping parts of us private and to ourselves. And it's like, you want to be close with your family, but you don't want to be that close in all regards. And sometimes it just helps to step out. But I can totally understand why there could be that mistrust. It's like, nah, they just want your money. They're gonna waste your time. They don't know you like we do. There's a lot of like protective elements, and so I respect that protective element. It's just sometimes it can be overbearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think that's a great way to provide insight, because we talk about empathy, and I saw this wonderful movie where the therapist character just said that like the moment we start looking at our family members and parents as just other humans rather than like mom, dad, you were supposed to be this sort of mold of what I envisioned a mom, dad to be, it kind of helps you lighten that burden on you too. It's like, why am I angry? Why am I holding on to this?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really great perspective.
But it's hard, right? Because it's like there's always that flip side of therapy saying that like, yeah, you can empathize with the other side, but you also got to empathize with yourself. Like you can't. So it's an interesting balance. How do you guys balance that? Like it's like, no, I got to care for myself. I can't keep being like, oh, I understand you and that's why how you treated me is okay. But also trying to see their side and not always giving them a lot of, harsh words and stuff to hear where it's like, no, you did this to me. I'm traumatized because of you, XYZ. You didn't understand me. But did I understand you? It's a tough balance. How do you guys balance that?
I would say two things. I think one thing is that a person really has to find identity.
That's good.
Yeah, I think that there has to be identity, and when there's a lack of identity, you will play the blame game.
Yeah.
Because this is my mother, this is my aunt, this is my father, this is my grandpa. Back to what you mentioned about taking them out of this box of being parent, their role, and just looking at them as this human being. But if there's a lack of identity, it's going to be hard. Two, I think that it comes with forgiveness. There has to be this power of forgiveness, because to even what Ebony mentioned is almost like people do the best that they can with you as a child, whether they protected you or not. They only can give you what they know. Right. And so even though it may have not protected you or built you up in this strong way, there has to be this level of forgiveness to them, because forgiveness is for you. In order for me to be the best authentic person that I can be, this individual in the human world, is that I have to let these people go. I have to let them go and say, okay, you did what you did, or you didn't do what you should have done, but I have to release you so that I can have the power to be the best authentic person that I can be.
That's a word.
Yeah. And the only way to do that, and that's when I find identity. You don't find identity because you're in this cesspool of the trauma and the blame game of what these people or family or however you categorize them, they've done to you. So I think it has to be true identity. I think it has to be this power of forgiveness. And thirdly, it has to be boundaries. After you have forgiven people, after you have allowed, that release to be gone, now you're learning your true identity. You're learning who you are, in spite of what has happened to you. And now I have to put boundaries around myself so that I can manage what goes on in my life and manage the energy that's surrounding me.
That's great.
I'm so glad that you pointed to identity. That's so good. And I think, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, how it's so important to make sure you have a solid foundation within a family. Because if you lack one parent, and sometimes you can have both parents who just, they don't know any better. You know what I mean? So you have like this false perception of what they should be, and they don't hold up to their responsibility. You can feel that, and it carries with you. And one thing relating to identity is, like, I was thinking of self-acceptance, really having to accept what has happened, learning to accept yourself, like learning to just have that honest conversation with yourself, be vulnerable with yourself. Like, hey, like, what is it that I don't, because I know we talk about a lot of doing stuff for others, but we can't really put out what we're not willing to put in. You know, how we view ourselves really affect the relationships that we have. You know, especially when it comes to relationships and friendships and people that we work with. It affects everyone as a whole. You know, you have to have some sense of self-awareness. I think that's something that I definitely agree with. Another thing that I want to mention, I can't remember the name of the book, but it was talking about boundaries, how to set boundaries. I don't know if you heard of it. So good. You have to learn how to set boundaries. Like, no is a complete sentence. I struggle with that. A recovering people pleaser. It's okay to say no. But then I had to realize, like, if people can't respect that, then that's okay. I have to do it for my own sanity and what's best for me. You know, and then you have the right people who come along and be just like, hey, like, you know, what's going on? Do you need anything? And if anybody overstep those boundaries, you have to protect yourself. You know, especially like, how do you handle, you know, like a parent who is the one that kind of triggered, you know, for you to get to that point. You're going to have to, look, I honor you. I respect you, but this is where I am right now. That's not disrespecting your mother to say, I'm placing this boundary. I need to protect myself. You know, I still love you, but there's a way to do it without, you know, I mean, we're adults, right?
Right.
So this is where I am. And, you know, I want you to honor that time, you know, and, you know, you still love them, but you owe it to yourself to put yourself first.
Definitely.
You can't please them. You'll never please them.
That's true.
You have to do what's best for you.
Wonderful.
So,
wonderful.
Yeah. Healthy boundaries.
Yes. And I think that even if you come from a 2-parent household, like I have clients that have come from this 2-parent household, and there's still different things that happen that they're not happy about. Like, I have a client currently right now, they have not forgiven their mother for some things, and it was some things that the mother was just emotionally unavailable for. And that has, you know, had a very difficult time for her in relationship building, because, you know, her mother was never emotionally available. So now she's challenged in her relationships, you know, trying to, you know, take that boundary down and really not be so guarded, because she doesn't know what it's like to be emotionally available to a person, because it's really learned behavior, right? It's learned behavior that we don't realize that are happening in our families, whether it's culturally, whether it's just tradition, you know, and sometimes, you know, those type of things can just put us in bad spaces too. Just sometimes it's not just this traumatic event that happens. Some people just have these other things that happen in their lives. And to your point, sometimes if you don't know how to say no, just say not right now. I try to help people in therapy. They have a hard time with no, because they wind up overly explaining why they're saying no. So I try to teach them as a skill. Okay, let's say not right now. Let's try that instead of no. And that works.
That's good.
That's great.
I love that.
It's amazing.
So you don't feel too bad about not right now.
It
Later.
release, right. The tension. It release the tension.
No, it's wonderful. Were you gonna say something?
No, that was
Oh no. How do you guys find that sense of identity? I guess going off of what you said, like, because finding that identity, I think, is sometimes an ongoing journey. But how do we feel comfortable? Like, yeah, this is more or less who I am, and this is where I want to be. How do we get there?
Ooh,
a great question.
That
It's almost an impossible question, but
it's a lot to unpack too.
It
right?
is.
It's a lot to unpack.
I guess I could start. For me personally, I would definitely have to say one, and this is for me personally, prayer. Like, God is really important to me. And so really just seeking God and really evaluating who I am. And oh well, I should say this too: God and therapy,
Yeah.
because we need both. I need
Start to
both.
wear the T-shirt today.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yes.
You know, people have different beliefs, but for me, and what gives me peace of mind is really having that relationship with God, and then to really loving myself. I struggle with that a lot. I love people, but like I'll overextend myself for people, but I realize you don't do that for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and I'm still in the process of doing that now. You know, my friends are like, "Okay, Valentine's Day is coming up. You know, so what? You don't have anyone. Take yourself on a date. Love on yourself.
Hey.
Give yourself a
Hey.
massage.
Self-love.
Self-love is
There you
everything.
go.
Yes, come on, snap it up.
Yes. Self-love is everything. So it's just really trying to learn to do the things that I really love doing. Like what keeps me alive? You know, I love to travel. You know, I love different cultures. I love trying different foods, you know, and so I really focus on that. What makes me feel alive, you know, and making sure that God's at the center of that. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
God, show me who I am. Reveal to me who I am. And he would do it.
Yeah.
You know, he would send people to confirm,
Yes.
kid you not, like this is something that you struggle with. You know, it'd be insecurity, loving yourself for who you are. You know, it's kind of like a healthy balance, because you can hear one thing and you're not really receiving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's what therapy comes in, dealing with the roots of that problem. You know, why don't you love yourself enough? You know, where is this insecurity coming from? You know, and the root was rejection. You know, growing up, like I struggled so much with like bullying, and because of the experiences and I attached to it, it became my identity. So how do you find that identity? You're going to have to start breaking those lies, the deception that you've been hearing, the toxic, even getting rid of some people. I had to get rid of some people. I say, if I love myself, I owe it to myself to remove toxic behaviors, toxic patterns, toxic people.
That's right.
And this might be tough, family too.
Yep.
That's a big one, because it's blood.
Yeah. Love them from a distance.
Okay, listen, that's the whole word. You can love. I love you, Mom. You stay right there. Stay right there. But that's a huge one. You know, and it's crazy because most of my friends have become my family.
Yeah.
You know, it's huge. But yeah, I can love you from a distance, but I owe it to myself to maintain my sanity.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's a big thing for me at the moment. Yeah.
I think with that's great. I think I totally agree with you that self-identity for me personally, it definitely comes from my relationship with God, because I believe that the more that you spend time in prayer with God or meditation with God, when you tell God, I love you, you are great, you are good, you are mighty, you are an awesome God, you are Alpha, you are Omega. And in return, what I've found is that he'll begin to tell you who you are when you tell him who he is. Because we don't really know who we are. We just know who we are based on our family. Your last name has been who you are. So I think it depends. If you are a spiritual person, I think that your spirituality plays a major role in your self-identity.
That's
right?
Good.
I think, but there are people that I counsel that they're not Christian. They're spiritual, but they're not Christian. So they don't believe in, like, there's this God. They believe there's this higher power. And so I think that another thing that helps you to identify with self-identity is you really have to take some time to be by yourself. You need to self-reflect on, who am I? I know what this particular family is, whatever your last name is. I know what the Browns, or I know what, the Corneliuses are, but who am I? I know I'm a part of that, but who am I? And then you got to do some self-evaluation. Look around you. What type of company are you keeping? Is the company you keeping peaceful? Are they, entrepreneurs? Are they, business people? What are the people that you're surrounding yourself around? What type of, and then self-reflection and self-identity comes not just spiritual, but the communities that you're around, but also it's really taking some time to be with yourself and say, who am I?
Yeah.
And so whether that's your higher power, whether that's God, they're going to guide you into self-identity, because with that self-identity it comes healing.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be some healing in order to have there to be some self-identity. And I think we attach ourselves to things and we say, that's me because I'm attached to this, or I'm attached to this person, or I'm attached to this name. So that's me. But who are you outside of that?
Yeah.
Right? Who are you outside of those things? And I think sometimes people have a hard time with being with themselves. And if you have a hard time being with yourself, there is going to be some lack of self-identity. If you have to be, and we're not talking about introverts and extroverts, right? Right? We're not talking about that. But when you have a hard time being by yourself, that is one of the indications that there is a lack of self-identity.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to attach yourself to just about anything because you don't know who you are. Just because your best friend likes chocolate ice cream doesn't mean you have to like it.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
But you
that's
won't
so
know what you like because everybody around you likes chocolate ice cream. So it's like, yeah, chocolate ice cream. But did you ever try it? Vanilla? For yourself, right? So,
that's so good.
yeah.
That's good. Spirituality, that's a huge one. Like, what do you believe in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know? And then another thing, like, taking off these labels.
Yeah.
You know, like, you're more than a brother, you're more than a son, you're more than working at your job. Like, that doesn't define who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At
Most
the end of the
definitely.
day, it doesn't. So, yeah, I 100% agree with that.
And I think too, sometimes that people that how do I want to say it? A person that struggles with their self-identity and they don't like to be by themselves, that to me, from a therapist perspective, is there's some level of fear in your life. And when there's fear in your life, it is going to always hinder identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to always hinder that.
Yeah. No, I think that's wonderful. And I wonder if sometimes hierarchy of just the way we view things, like this is better than this, or XYZ career is better than this.
Mm-hmm.
I found like that can sometimes hinder you from valuing a part of yourself that deserves that value.
Mm-hmm.
I've found that, like, I'm not saying like this is a possible solution. What I've found is that people are like, oh my God, you're really, really good at this video game. Have you ever considered making a YouTube channel or becoming a streamer? Because like a lot of people do then find success in it. Or you're really good at drawing. It's like, but could I really do that for a career? And I think the only reason we ask ourselves this question is because we maybe recognize that it's going to be hard to get that level, but also if you're good at something, like it took a while for me to like come to terms with this. Own it with full confidence, because like that is what you're good at and nobody has the right, or nobody can take that away from you. If you're good at drawing, then go ahead, be an artist. Mm-hmm. And people are like, oh, where are you going to find a career doing art? And yeah, that is a valid question at first. But I was thinking about this because you and we've talked about art, but there's art exhibitions. There's things you can apply to.
Commission work.
Commission work.
Yeah.
I recently just thought about it because art has helped me kind of sometimes take a release from everything and just express emotion. I'm just like, if I'm renting out a space to do a stand-up, what's saying I can't rent out a smaller space and just put up a little Facebook event saying, hey, art exhibition. And boom, sell some things. Yeah. And now people know. And then get them to comment on social media and be like, I bought this from this exhibit from this artist. Now you have like 5 different strangers who are showcasing your art to the world. But you have to be willing to put yourself out there and say like, no, that's me. And that's my superpower. Whether it's video games, cooking, art, anything, we got to stop acting like it's lesser. Like what we're good at is lesser. One of my favorite quotes is like, Einstein said everybody's a genius, but if you tell a fish to climb a tree, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work. It's like everyone's got that thing, and
Yeah.
why are we saying one's better than the other? Like, own what you're good at.
Yeah.
Even if it's as simple as like we're doing this podcast and everything, right? Like through the stand up, I'm like, hey, I like talking and sharing. And if I can turn that into something, then why not? It helps me, it helps people, it's healing. We don't have to fit these constructs of, oh, you got to sit behind a desk and do this, or it has to have some sort of software involved, or it has to have some sort of traditional career-based path or work environment involved. Like, people exist out there for everything, and you got to own what your superpower is, if you will.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
You know, social media, to your point about just the art or just that example, I think social media has made it available for you to be able to do anything.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
Yeah. So to that example,
Yes.
like you can basically just blow up just by
Mhm.
putting your art on social media and actually sharing it
Yeah.
with, you know, people sharing it. I mean, that social media has turned the game over when it
Right.
comes to something like that. So I think that's great. I mean, you hear about these influencers,
Right.
right? Like, I don't know a whole lot about them, but I mean, I'm trying to catch up. It seems like every time something
my
come out,
gosh.
it's something new out. But to
Yeah.
your point, it goes viral, and
Right.
you have now become not only an entrepreneur, but you possibly could have just become an influencer and a millionaire just by
Yeah.
Right.
just from the basement of your home or
Right.
from the kitchen of your house, and boom.
And you know the interesting thing about that I feel like the pandemic really shifted our perspective
Yes.
when it
Yeah.
comes to
Yes.
work.
Yes.
Because
yes.
we were getting laid off, and it's that's still in the process of happening
Yeah.
of that happening now. But we just like, wait a minute.
Yes.
We
Yes.
can work from home, and we were forced to sit with ourselves. And it was just like, why not launch
Yes.
that book? Why
Yes.
not launch that
Yes.
blog? Why
Yes.
not put out that
Yes.
art? And social
Yes.
media is amazing.
Yes.
It's a powerful tool.
Yes.
My cousin, she's a graphic designer now. She's working with Target
Wow.
and
Hey.
post. Yes,
That's
I'm
awesome.
so proud of her.
Yeah.
And just
Congrats.
starting her social media page. They
Yeah.
found her on social media. The art director reached out to her.
See?
Yeah,
Boom.
and
Wow.
that's it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So and then like there's pain and purpose. You know, someone out there could be watching your story, and it's like, wow, if you can do it, I can
Absolutely.
do it too. Because fear was what hinders us.
Yes.
Like we're
Yes.
all are talented. We all have gifts.
Yeah.
But fear will literally, suffocate us into thinking
Yeah.
that maybe we're not good enough, or what if we fail, or what if
Yeah.
this doesn't work out because we did it before.
Yeah.
You know, you never know unless you try. But it's really inspiring seeing someone else go out there, starting from scratch, making some mistakes along the way,
Yeah.
and becoming successful.
And what I love is that we have more in common than we think.
Yeah.
That's
You
so
you
good.
know, like, even to your point about art therapy, usually as practitioners, we use art therapy for young people because they don't know how to put language to what they're trying to say, right? So
Yeah.
we let children, draw what it is that they're feeling or experiencing. But I like that anybody can do that. You can be a full adult and still experience art therapy because there's something going on that you want to draw out of your heart, out of your mind, out of your thoughts. And when you put that out, you realize, wow, I feel the same way. You would be amazed at art that someone puts out that you could possibly have written or drawn that same similar picture, because we have more in common than we think. It's because we don't talk. We don't think that we have a lot in common. But if you start putting out art therapy, you go to group therapy, you wind up just talking to somebody in the airport. Well, depending on how you feel, if you're an open person, right? Okay. Like I'll go in the airport and just start talking to people. Especially if I got to wait on the plane. But you realize that you have something in common with people, and that brings us, that connects us. There is a connection in the
Yes.
world, whether that's connection of pain, whether there's connection of trauma, whether there's this connection of unforgiveness, whether there's this connection of lack of identity, there's this
Yes.
connection with us, that within the people, regardless of your community, regardless of your culture, there is this connection that we have in common. And I think that with those type of things, art therapy, I've seen children draw the same similar picture in two different households.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. It's real.
Yeah.
And it's healthy. It's healing.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
One of the best things I heard from my therapist at Rogers was, because I asked him, because when we were going through exposure and response prevention therapy, it's like, don't shut away the things you don't like and just sit with them. So I couldn't help but ask the question of like, okay, so then I wanted to know what his thoughts were on the idea of cancel culture. And then he brought up, he's like, you're not far off when you bring up that discussion. His answer was so cool because there was no judgment or there was no taking sides. He's just like, the root of cancel culture, that type of thinking, is we judge in others what we fear may exist within ourselves.
That's so good.
And I'm
I
like,
love
that
that.
changed my
Powerful.
view on everything. I'm like, wow. Is it us though? Like, it's like, is so much of that fear being like, oh, I can't put this out there, what are people going to say? But then you have to ask yourself, like, why are you judging all those things
Yeah.
by yourself? Maybe those other people wouldn't judge you like, it's amazing. You guys know that meme where the guy is like, everybody finds like a super complicated way to do something, and then he shows the easy way, and he's just like, you seen that
I
meme?
haven't seen that one.
That guy started out as just like a basic trend. Like, someone's like taking like, I don't know, someone invented like a really, really like overly complicated way to like cut a pizza properly, and he just took a pizza cutter and he's like, there you go. Boom. That's an example.
Yeah.
And now I saw this guy on like a TV ad partnering with a celebrity, and they were doing that meme, and I'm like, wow, you just took this basic idea. You knew that it was funny to just have a deadpan expression and talk about the hypocrisy of us overcomplicating things. And sure, it's a meme, but that didn't make you any less. You owned it. And now go you. You started out as a trend, and now you're doing a TV ad. And good for you. Like, you own that comedic aspect of yourself. You didn't judge yourself thinking like, oh, I can't make a career out of going like this.
Yeah.
Well, you just did.
I tell people, like, I tell people, I think for one, to your point, I think that people that kind of hold back from certain things, whether it's something simple, for one, you're judging yourself, right?
Yeah.
Two, there's this lack of rejection. There's rejection happening within yourself that you're second guessing putting this out, or, you know, creating this or doing whatever it is. And thirdly, I just try to tell people, if I have to encourage them or push them, do it in fear. Just do it.
Yes.
Just do it in fear. Even if, you know, I'm thinking about that example, like, he could have did that in fear, like, this is so stupid, but I'm gonna just do it, right? I'm just gonna do it. And let the chips fall where they may.
Right.
And look where the chips have failed. The
Yeah.
chips have actually gone on to a celebrity. Like,
Right.
so I say do it scared. Do it in fear. But own what you do, because that's something on the inside of you that's saying, hey, you know, I'm gonna try this, and, you know, I'm gonna put this out, and if it works, I think one of the best things we can learn is we can learn from our mistakes. I think mistakes are good.
Yeah.
Some people run away from mistakes, or they're very shameful, or they have this heavy this guilt about their mistakes. But I think mistakes come to teach you, and that's the best teacher, is to learn from your mistake. It wouldn't be a mistake until you do it.
Yeah.
If it stays in your mind, it
Yeah.
can never be a mistake. So I
Yeah.
just say, do it scared, do it in fear, just
That's
do
wonderful.
it, as Nike would say.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's good. Because then you just be sitting there and not getting anything done.
And guess what? Somebody else will probably do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you like, I thought of that 3 years ago. Why didn't do it?
Right. And I think that goes back to that self-belief thing. A friend of mine, he brought up a wonderful concept. He's just like, slowly we've become so afraid of hearing that no, that rejection, that like, oh, your book's not good enough, or we don't like this script idea, or you tried to make something cool but you're not a chef yet, and then you just stop trying because you're like, that one person said I'm not good. I guess why is that? It's just like, why are we so afraid to, why do we stop after rejection one? Why are we so hesitant to be like, I'm gonna try again and again and again? And then we hear all these examples and like we're reminded that, like, I mean, I don't remember all the celebrities, but like Tina Fey was X age and doing this before she was on Saturday Night Live. J.K. Rowling was suicidal and had Harry Potter rejected from so many places before Harry Potter became a thing. And then we hear all that, we're like, whoa, amazing. KFC. I bring up KFC because like the guy was 70 or 80 when he started KFC.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
To have that amount of self-belief in that age.
Wow.
Be like, I make some good chicken.
And
boom, it's like KFC is all over the world.
Yeah.
That's like, that's why, like, we hear all this and we promote it, but then to ourselves it's like, nah, I'm not good enough. And I wonder why that is. I know it's a heavy question.
It is.
I think it goes, again, I think it goes back to that rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, I feel like if a person is not working in therapy, or they're not working on unpacking that, to your point, that's gonna be always a first trigger of a no. Okay, let me stop. You have to unpack rejection in therapy. Will it 100% go away? I don't think it will 100% go away. However, you still have this 90% of rejection that you have not dealt with. And so when the one person tells you no, there is this trigger of, let me shut down, let me just not put it out there because this person. And then we got to think about who the level of power we're giving that person. Like, who is that person? Is this just your buddy? Is this just, somebody that works in banking, but they have no experience in art grafting and branding and marketing? And, really it's well, I'll say this, I hate to bring it up, but I have to because it's a part of me. Like, the Bible talks about in Proverbs that you have to surround yourself with a multitude of counsel. Mm-hmm. When there's no multitude of counsel, you lack life.
Yeah.
And so I think that there has to be an unpacking of rejection in therapy. You have to deal with where you were rejected. Who rejected you? How close were they that rejected you? What did the rejection make you feel? Are you feeling that again when you bring this idea up to your friend or your family member? Are you, maybe you're that 13-year-old, that 10-year-old girl that's in that rejection mode, even though I'm talking to a full-grown adult. Mm-hmm. But maybe I'm talking to the 13-year-old that experienced that rejection, or that 5-year-old boy that experienced that rejection. And so the first thing you do is you just shut down, because really what you're doing is, not only are you moving into this lack of rejection, you're moving into fear, and you're shutting down. You're shutting yourself down. You're shutting your authentic self down. You're shutting your possible availability of wealth, your purpose. Like, that could be your purpose, and you're shutting down your purpose because that 5-year-old, that 7-year-old, or whatever age you were, that person is coming up.
Yeah, that's really good. That you really deal with childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Because I talk to a lot of friends who, because of how they're handling relationships and their perspective, a lot of it deal with traumatic roots from childhood and how they view themselves. And I think you really hit the nail on the head. It really takes accountability and community. I'm really big on that. You know, I think that has a lot to do with it too. And one thing I would definitely say, community counseling, coaching. I know counseling, if I'm not mistaken, deals with the past, the present, and future, and coaching is more, this is where you are now, and this is the steps to take towards your future. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So that, you know, being able to use resources like that, having a mentor, someone to kind of just guide you along. Another thing I would say, when we get stuck in potential, because this is like a common thing that I hear with my friends, because they're all gifted, you know, and it's like, oh, you got this, you can do this, and either it's just your perception of yourself, a lack of resources, like where do you start? Yeah. You know what I mean? And one, it does come with just really taking accountability and really doing the work. You have to do the inner healing work. Because I've been in counseling so many times, and I realized I would hear everything. My counselor, she was hard on me. Like, you gotta do the work, Ebony. You can't just be listening. Yeah. You know, we can work. We can collab. This is a collaborative relationship. That's right. So when I tell you do this and I give you these homework assignments, you're gonna have to do the inner work. Yeah. You have to sit with yourself. Yeah. That's so uncomfortable. Oh. Yeah. You have to deal with the pain. You have to deal with the trauma, and that's where it starts. That's how you get with identity. That's how you become secure in yourself. Yeah. You know, you have to sit with yourself, and then, like you said, you need community. You need accountability. That matters so much. Mm-hmm. Just having someone to say, like, I'm here for you. I don't want anything from you. I believe in you. Because when you have people to believe in you, you start to believe in yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, so community, having the right people with you, a mentor, counselor, a coach, and learning to become a student of what you're passionate. You have to be a student. You know, I love counseling, but I'm very unfamiliar with the field. You know, so I get involved. You know, I try to volunteer. I try to learn as much as I can. I read a lot of books. You know, we have so much. It's like there's so many resources out there. You have YouTube. You got podcasts. There is no excuse of why we can't learn anything.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that NAMI Chicago does, is that we have all of these great support resources. Like, we have recovery groups, we have support groups, we have family support groups. So maybe your family doesn't really understand what you're going through and you need them to support you. NAMI has groups that will say, hey, we have psychoeducation, we have these 8-week wraparound classes that will help your family members to help them understand what bipolar is, what schizophrenia is, you know, that you're bipolar depression, what that looks like, manic depression. So NAMI has all of these supports, excuse me, whether it's the family, it's peer support groups, because those are led by people that are living with the experience. So now you have somebody to say, hey, you know, I experienced this in my life. However, this is how I'm managing it. So I think sometimes when people see somebody else that looks like them and they're managing it, they're being able to be successful in the world, you know, they're, you know, being productive, they have a family, they're, you know, having children, they're getting married, those type of things, that peer group says, hey, I can mirror that. If that person can overcome suicide, so can I. If this person has been dealing with manic depression for 5 years, and now I'm realizing that's my situation, that I'm not alone in this, that I have this community of help. So NAMI has all of those resources to help.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. The day it clicked for me that, like, man, like you said, like when they said, like, you have to put in that effort to do the assignments we're telling you have to put in that effort to work on yourself. My therapist, he was a funny guy, and he's just like, all right, fine, you don't do any of this, you do this your way, what's gonna happen? And it was a long-winded way of saying, like, yeah, fine, my OCD is going to kick in. Then one day I might try again. And he's like, okay, where are they going to send you? I'm like, probably back to Highland Park Hospital. And he's like, well, where's Highland Park going to send you? I'm like, probably back here. And he's just like, well, so you want to start doing, I'm like, fine, you got me. But I appreciate that, I want to, this is like my little PSA, like, therapists are people too.
Yeah.
Like this, like, look, proof right here.
Yes.
Latasha is her own person, like we look at the field of therapy, and there's often this idea of, oh my God, these outside people, these robots who are going to tell us who we are. It's like, no, they're humans too. You don't have to be afraid. They're funny. You can talk to them about the TV shows you like.
Yeah.
You can talk to them about anything you talk to with any other person.
Yeah.
Like when you just define it as, here's a person with an unbiased opinion who's going to help you work out through your trauma. Oh, that sounds nice. Therapist, that doesn't sound nice.
Sounds real boring, right?
Right.
One thing that I try to tell people is this: as a therapist, we are not the expert. You are the expert. The
That's
client
awesome.
is the expert.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes the client looks at the therapist in this high regard, but we're not the expert. Two things about therapy: you're the expert of your own healing and your own work. I'm just there to help navigate you through it. I'm just there to help you come out of the stuck patterns that you may possibly be in. Two, the great thing about therapy, to what you're mentioning and what I hear, which is what I love, is that the most healthiest therapeutic relationship is between the therapist and the client. If you don't have this organic connection with your therapist, it is not going to work. And what I love about what you're saying is, it sounds like, from my hearing, is that there is this organic, healthy relationship, that you like your therapist and your therapist likes you. And that's one of the things that, they'll teach you in school, and that what you really learn is that you're not the expert as the therapist. And two, the most successful and rewarding process of therapy is that it is a very therapeutic, organic relationship between the therapist and the client. If you pick somebody because they have 5 degrees and they have, 5 initials, commas behind their name, and they've been in this particular hospital for 25 years, and that's it, and there's no very genuine, empathetic, just leaned in, active listening there, therapy is not going to work. So I would just say those two things.
That's awesome.
So for anybody that's watching or listening, that is very important to know, that the therapist is not the expert, and that you want to find you a therapist that your relationship is going to be very organic and very therapeutic. It's basically going to be a cool therapist. If you got a cool therapist, keep doing the work.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, because a very real thing I've seen is people try therapy and it's like, it's not for me. I didn't have a good experience. Guys, listen to what Latasha said. It's true, because the whole point of therapy is to keep working, keep trying, and not judging. Part of that comes with us not judging one therapist and one experience as the, encompassing truth of what it is. They're people too. Maybe that one therapist wasn't right for you. But that doesn't mean the whole thing is bad. Just
It's
keep
like
trying.
a doctor. Like, you've been to multiple dentists, right? You've been to multiple, general primary physicians, right? Some people have been very blessed to still be at their have their what's the word I want to, their primary doctor for 20 years.
Oh my gosh, yes, I agree.
But then there's some people, I know I've had like 3 primary doctors until I found my person. Right? So, and this, to your point, it's the same thing with therapy. Don't just judge the process or the work based on one particular person or therapist. And then too, it comes with a lot of different things. I hear you mention that sounds like your therapist is a male, right? So sometimes it's male-male relationship that works. Sometimes it's female-female relationship. Some people don't have a preference whether it's male or female. Some people are very, specific about their culture. So they may find a therapist that, if you're Asian, you're going to probably find or look after a Asian therapist, right? So it really depends. Like even in your spirituality, a lot of my clients are Christian people, which is amazing for me because I don't have to have all this red tape around when I can say God or use a scripture, because as a client, one of the tools is the Bible. Mm-hmm. But that person that's a client that's not Christian, I can't use the Bible because that's not how their toolbox works.
Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting you said that because being a counseling student, one thing my professor was teaching us is how to be culturally sensitive.
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate the world, understanding people's cultures, understanding people's stories, and I literally have like non-judgmental perspective. Yeah. That is so key. Yeah. So that's something I have to keep in mind too. Like, okay, like not everyone's gonna have the same values, not everyone's gonna have the same beliefs. Yeah. So it's really understanding that and learning different perspectives when it comes to the counseling field is very eye-opening. Yeah. Because you meet people from so many different backgrounds. Yes. And I'm just like, wow, this is a lot. So that's one thing they've been pushing on us is like, what does it like to be a culturally sensitive, practitioner?
Yeah, sure.
In the field.
And I think that's important because a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with other cultures, it's certain things that the language, if there's awkward if there's silence to someone from different cultures, that may seem awkward, right? But maybe that's the culture of this particular client.
Yeah.
The silence. Think about, and this is the things they teach you in school, like with specifically with Asians. Sometimes the women, they won't look up into the therapist's face or in their eyes. It's it's not a disrespect. If you're not culturally sensitive, you think, what's wrong with this person, right? But that may be their culture. So that's why I find a lot of times that some people, they're very specific about the therapist that they're seeking, whether it's male to male, whether it's culture to culture, Christian to Christian. And then you have the flip side. Some people are mandated to do therapy. So, that's a thing that's taught in school, right? Where you have this resistance. Some people are coming to therapy and it's mandatory. So they have this resistance of not even sharing what's really on their mind. Like, do you really want to get help?
Yeah.
Or not?
And it's interesting you said that because I was reading a case study. And I was feeling so bad because my professor was saying, like, what if you had a client who was convicted of killing his family and he was ordered by the court to go to counseling? How would you handle that situation? He's like, be completely honest, And I was like, wow.
It's stuff to think about, right?
Yeah.
It's really deep and you don't want to hold any judgment. But that was something I really had to sit with. And it's just like, can people change? Like, people can change, It's just, who knows what was going through his mind at the time, but it really opened my mind to think like, that is, oh my gosh, that could happen.
Yeah. I think that's why I think that's why assessing is important, right? I loved assessment class in college because I think before you can really dig into a person's mental and what they may be experiencing is you have to assess the background. You got to unpack. Is there any mental illnesses or health conditions in the family? Is anybody else been diagnosed with bipolar or, schizophrenia? Have you ever been hospitalized? Right? Assessing tells a lot of the story that we don't have to do the work of in therapy because the assessment tells a lot of it, right? And I think sometimes, I'm gonna be very transparent. I feel like sometimes the client is not always honest doing that assessing part because they don't know the therapist well. So like, I don't know if I want to tell you that. I don't know if I want to say,
True.
you know, this was happened in my family. And so you take the assessment, but then there's this time where you looking back through your notes like, now I've been seeing them for 6 months. They said no, but just in this session today, they just telling me that their grandma, you know, had some, you know, some depression. So that's what I love about therapy, is that you have to be an active listener. You cannot be a great communicator without being an active listener.
True.
That's so good.
It's very
good.
true. Well, we talked a lot about rejection, self-identity, all of it. Do you guys have any takeaways or stories that you have for the audience, something to leave them with? I know I have one, but I want to wrap it up because I think it'll tie in to the event. But yeah, just want to ask you guys one by one. Take as long as you want. We can edit this out.
I was going to say one thing that really, just from hearing you both, and it's just really opened my mind to realizing that we're all are human. Learning to embrace our humanity and realizing that our stories are very much powerful. There's pain in our purpose. Mm-hmm. And so when we're comfortable with sharing our stories and sharing our truth, it inspires others to do the same. Mm-hmm. And the importance of really having that safe, comfortable, and non-judgmental environment is so key. That's what it is. We fear being judged from, like, you know how you mentioned about the client. It's like, I've been knowing you for 6 months, and it's painful. It's really uncomfortable. So it's just like really being a listening ear and just creating an environment where you're like, hey, you can trust me. I am safe. When a person feels safe, you kind of let your guard down a bit. You know, it takes time to kind of like what do you call it, peeling the onions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how it is.
That takes time, and learning to patience.
Yeah. Patience
too. Like, if it takes me 3 weeks to get healed from this, but it might take someone else years. It can go deep, you know. So it's just, that's one thing I'm learning, just embracing our humanity, and that we all really need each other.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I would say to anybody that's watching or listening to this podcast, whether you're experiencing anxiety, stress, overwhelmness, depression, you just feel weird in some type of way, I would just say that you are not alone. You are not alone, that places like this and spaces like this are here to support you. We are a community here to support you. NAMI Chicago is here to support you. I would say start your journey today. If you feel like there's no help from your immediate family and your immediate people, I would say basically just find some help. Call NAMI Chicago. I think it's 1-888-HELP, but we'll post it. Find some help. We'll help you find a therapist in your community, help you find some resources, a support group in your community, wherever part of the city or the suburb you're in. And know that on this journey of inner healing, that you are not alone. Find someone that you feel comfortable and safe with as a therapist. And remember that the therapist is not the expert. You are the expert of your life, and that your therapist is going to help you navigate life. And also know that extend grace to yourself, that give yourself grace in this process. You've been experiencing it long enough. It's a new year, and we want you to be whole. We want you to be healthy, and we want you to be the best authentic you that you can be in the earth realm.
That's amazing.
So good.
That's amazing. I want to end by sharing the journey that got us here. I will say that after therapy and after the idea for the stand-up happened, it has not been smooth pickings, easy sailings at all. In October, I reconsidered a friendship with someone. In November, I considered relapsing. Just a couple weeks ago, considered relapsing. But I talked to someone each time. And not just that, first time I did an open mic, December, bombed. January, had a better experience. Last weekend, Friday night, I think it was like, I was going through the rehearsals of it, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do an entire 1 hour special anymore. And I'm like, what are you doing? There's 8 weeks left. You got to do this. And I credit therapy for pushing me to keep reworking things. Every single time, the key message that came along was, you bombed. This didn't work out. That's not you. Just reapproach what you want to do. You had good ideas. And I had to tell myself, I'm like, why did this sound so good on paper? There was a part of this that worked out, right? There was a part of this that made me start this in the first place. And so now I'm happy to say that it took some restructuring and a push, and now we got that 1 hour, 15-minute special down. But it came from going back at it and saying, like, yeah, maybe it's okay. You've made some mistakes. You're going to continue to make mistakes. And the day you get on stage, you may bomb as well. But I'm going to do it in fear. I'm going to do it in fear because I'd rather do it and try it and go for it and show you that it might be possible. And if I don't put myself out there, then what was this all for? It's okay if I fail. At the end of the day, you hear my story, you don't laugh at all, you heard the story. You do laugh, wonderful. But we're going to try. We're going to keep trying every single time. It's okay to fail. Keep failing and learn through it. So yeah, by no means is this easy. None of this is easy. But we're here. We're here. And we're going to keep going. So 6 weeks left. That's crazy.
Oh,
6 weeks left.
Let's go.
But yeah, signing off. This is Yash here, Latasha, Ebony, Hattie, and NAMI. We're gonna try to get this everywhere you can. Come out. Come see this story. I felt like a nobody. Now I'm starting to feel like somebody. So, and that's thanks to everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Be well.